I heard a really good joke recently.
Go on.
Why are there no vampires in Africa?
I don't know.
Because they bless the rains down in Africa.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Emmy.
And I'm James.
And welcome back to the Bestiary Monster Manual A to Z. And James, what are we talking about today?
So, dragons, cool. Dracoliches, pretty metal. Take a dragon, suffuse it with darkness and shadow, and make it a creature of the night. It's the Shadow Dragon.
Oh my gosh! Yes! The Shadow Dragon is so very nasty. It is a dragon that has been suffused with the necrotic energy of Shadowfell.
Yes. The Shadowfell, a dark and, as the name would imply, shadowy reflection of the material plane. Things are similar, but just worse.
Yes.
So, you get a Shadow Dragon where, through either being born in the Shadowfell or somehow ending up there through intention or accident and spending long enough there, that it loses its essence and becomes a creature of shadow. No longer its original self, red, green, copper, brass, you name it. It is defined and formed of the essence of the Shadowfell, and so loses much of what it was originally. It loses fire if it was a red dragon, or lightning if it was blue. Instead, its essence, its energy is inherently necrotic.
That's correct. And much like the Dracolich entry, this is a template. So you are given the stats to lay down on top of another dragon of a different color. Now, alternatively, unlike the Dracolich, as you say, they do lose a lot of what made them themselves. They lose their breath weapon that was innate, and it becomes necrotic. They have necrotic sensitivities and things, or resistances now and things like that. The only thing they really do keep is their original elemental resistances and their stats. Past that point, it really does change into something else.
They gain sunlight sensitivity, which obviously isn't great, but if they're in the Shadowfell, no sunlight. And with that, they become like a stealth dragon, which, aside from being a great band name, is, you know, a really cool, unique thing. The idea of a huge, potentially, creature, because dragons can get that big, is then having a stealth proficiency plus 8. Is, I think, really, really cool. Gets advantage on hiding in, or rather, not advantage, is allowed to take the hide action if it's in dim light or shadow. Just imagine being crept up on by a dragon.
By this thing. It's awful. And this guy, again, there's a lot of places where you could meet him. But if you look at the art here on this guy, you can really see he's lost a lot of his material form, which is why these guys can't become Dracoliches. They are really a part of that shadow magic now, and that magic makes up their body more than anything else. And you can see that the way it oozes or drips. There's a lot of different elemental things you could almost go into with the shadow that's peeling off of them. Is it air? Is it water? Is it ooze? I really am not sure.
I mean, to me, especially with the wings, you can see that it is no longer a strictly material being, that it is this creature formed from shadow, and how its essence does sort of take on this like mist-like quality, especially, as I say, on the wings. You can see it coming from the outstretched claws there, and the sort of frill running down the back of the neck. It is not a totally solid thing. I love as well with the artwork that in amongst this kind of charcoal, dark grey, scaly creature, you've got bright purple glow within it. Very eerie, malevolent look of magic to it.
Yes, because they're still a dragon. They're still magic, and that magic is pouring out of them still that inner light that is coming, that in this case is very much looks like he's about to attack. His breath weapon is probably the next thing that you're about to see coming out of his mouth. It's necrotic again, so but it's still magical. It's still going to be bright, even in a kind of dark saber in Star Wars sort of sense, where it's
that's a deep cut into the expanded universe right there. I am here for it.
No, they have it now. The dark saber is not. It's canon now. They listen to us. I'm so happy. Anyway, D&D.
This is a D&D show.
We're talking about D&D and Shadow Dragons, kids. But that's what he looks like is coming out of his mouth a little bit. There's this almost, they talk about how their eyes lose pigment. There's something about the sheen to his skin as well that kind of gives it that cave fish look. It's a part of shadow, but the part of it that's formed has almost lost its ability to show color anymore. It's just thin and translucent and exists in caves and shadows and darkness.
And as we say, this being a template and specifically stated as a template, you've got a lot of options. We have said before when discussing this, I see plots happening
all over the place, because this guy, as a part of Shadowfell, how did he become a part of Shadowfell? Was it that it was born there? Was this dragon, his parents specifically hatched him in Shadowfell? Was this unintentional? So there's a listing here in the monster manual that if a dragon falls asleep, as ancient dragons are wont to do, a portal might have opened up underneath unbeknownst to the dragon, and while they were sleeping, this dark energy suffused into them unwittingly. Maybe they were sent there and banished to this plane, and they've come back to this one for vengeance. This can happen to a dragon of any age. This can go from young to ancient to hatchling, everything. It can happen to any color. And that's the one that I think I got really interested in, is what if this happens to a good metallic dragon? What does that look like?
Yeah, and again, you've got options. Perhaps there's the opportunity for a redemption arc here. But in and of itself, the Shadow Dragon is so suffused with that malevolence that defines the Shadowfell that they are pretty inherently evil. But, how cool would it be to, as an adventuring party, set about, because perhaps you are simply not strong enough to be able to fight this thing. Even as a young Shadow Dragon, it's a challenge rating 13, which is not crazy high, but it's still pretty formidable.
It's still
and
nasty.
Could be a lot higher depending on the age of the dragon. So, how cool would it be to have your main goal being not to destroy this thing, but to restore it to its original form?
Yeah, what if you know that this was a copper dragon and it's your duty to bring it back to the world as it was somehow? I don't know. That sounds very interesting. I wouldn't even know how to go about it because so much of their physical form has been lost. There's so many ideas there. And then there's also the idea of ambiance for this guy as well, because they're part of Shadowfell. And Shadowfell by itself, it is an inherently evil plane. The things that it gets into, it corrupts them irrevocably. So if this guy is near portals to Shadowfell, if you're playing a campaign that's based on Shadowfell oozing into the material plane, he might be guarding it. He might be something that's nearby. If you're in Shadowfell, he might control an area of it. And this might be kind of a Strahd-esque bad guy where it's there and you might not necessarily go to it right away. You might spend a large portion of the time going around what it controls so as not to incur its wrath or have it sneak up on you in the middle of the night, as it is perfectly capable of doing.
Yeah, and as we've said before, and you make the point about ambiance, the Shadow Dragon and dragons in general are so iconic, and not just to Dungeons and Dragons as a hobby, but to myths and legends all over the world anyway, that they're a fantastic tool for storytelling. You might never actually face off against one of these things, but what a way for a DM to introduce the flavor of a setting when, your party, perhaps at a lower level, finds themselves on the plane of shadow, and flying above them is this thing. Like, what a way to set tone. Maybe they will never be strong enough to face it, but my god, it's so cool!
It's so cool. It's a part of why we get into this game in the first place. There's a reason that dragons is in the name of the game. It's that idea that the world is big, the world is magic, the world is terrifying, and you as a character can influence that and become a part of it and fight whatever it is that you're fighting and fight for whatever it is you're fighting for, and it's an entirely new universe for you.
Yeah. We should be very thankful that ancient cultures found dinosaur bones and decided that these creatures must have been even cooler than dinosaurs actually are.
I know, they looked at it and thought, oh no, this was a giant flying magical monster, and I'm so happy for that assumption. Our ancestors were obviously very cool to come up with this idea. So thank you, ancient humans who saw these bones. We have so much to thank because our legends are so cool.
Thank you for joining us here at the Adventurers Pack for The Bestiary, Monster Manual A through Z. What sort of music do you think the band Stealth Dragon would make? My bet's on power metal, but let us know in the comments what you think. While you're there, hit the bell to be notified of when we release new content. You can also, if you feel like it, support us at our Patreon, link down below, and subscribe, of course. We'd appreciate it. We'd love to grow the pack. And join us next week where we dive even deeper into dragons.